Okay, here we are talking about Severance Season 2, Episode 9, The After Hours. This episode written by Dan Erickson and is directed by Uda Breschwitz. In Episode 9, Mark and Devin meet with Cobell, who warns them about what happens to Gemma if the Cold Harbor file is completed. Milchick calls Mark to try to get him to come to work and finish, but Mark tells him that he needs a day and promises to be at work tomorrow. At night, Mark and Devin go and meet with Cobell in the birthing cabins to try and wake up Mark's innie. Milchick, in addition to trying to track down Mark, oversees Miss Wong's graduation from the Wintertide Fellowship and stands up to Mr. Drummond, who's furious when Mark does not come to work on the day Cold Harbor was supposed to be completed. Gretchen confesses to Audie Dillon about her feelings for Annie Dillon. Audie Dillon says he is going to quit. Gretchen then goes to see Annie Dillon so that she can cut that off. But this makes Annie Dillon want to resign from Lumen, and he does go in and submit his resignation, even though Helly tries to convince him not to and follow the clues to the exports hall that Irving left for him. Speaking of Irving, he finds Bert in his home going through some of his Lumen files, but Bert, who used to be a Lumen driver, takes Irv to a train station, buys him a ticket, and tells him to never come back. They share a very intimate moment about their feelings for one another, but Irv still gets on the train and leaves. Lastly, we see Helly taking up the job of trying to find the exports hall, but a surprise when James Egan shows up on the severed floor. My biggest takeaway from this episode is leading to the finale. I have no idea where they're going to go from here. I mean, there's any
Okay.
number of reasons we could go, and some of the things like the standing up to Drummond and Jamie Egan showing up surprised me. So yeah, just clueless as to where this might take us in the finale.
I'm really looking forward to it and I'm really curious and I agree. I find myself when I was writing my recap article, which people can go read on tvobsessive.com if they're so inclined, that I find myself thinking, well, this is setting up the finale. This is largely like putting the pieces in position to set up the finale, and I had that feeling, but then as you said, at the same time, it's like, well, I still have no idea what the end game is.
Right.
I don't really know in various ways what's going to happen in the finale. So we've got a good amount of stuff to talk about here, I think, in terms of plot, in terms of references, allusions, all of that kind of stuff. Where would you like to start digging into this, Ryan?
Um, Maybe just a something you brought up to me, which is a very broad sense of maybe not necessarily a theme, but an inspiration for this show. There's been plenty of commentary out there that this show, the title, and then some content within it is taken directly from a 50-year-old, 60-year-old maybe episode of the Twilight Zone titled also The After Hours.
All right, sure. Let's jump right in.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into the Twilight Zone reference. So yeah, people that didn't notice this, I mean, you could have discovered it by, doing a little Googling about the name of the Severance episode, which is a little odd, right?
hmm
The After Hours, 2 words, right? Or 3 words, right? After, but anyway, it's not titled After Hours, it's titled The After Hours. The
Right.
After Hours. Um, but then, yeah, as you mentioned, it's not, I feel like it's not just a wink and a nod. It is, but it's also explicitly referenced within the narrative of the show, because when ultimately they show up at the birthing cabin, um, Harmony references this episode of the Twilight Zone like it's a code,
Yeah. Like it's the
to
password to get in.
the gate card. Yeah, which is, and one of the things that really stuck out to me there was it seems like it's her second attempt to get in. Um, so I mean, in terms of the plot, we've definitely gotten ahead of ourselves. But we'll talk more about that. Don't worry, we'll talk about it. But so that really stood out because she directly mentions, Miss Marshall White, ninth floor specialty department. I'm looking for a golden thimble. They actually have a back and forth with Army and the K card. Um, I did go and watch the Twilight Zone episode. Did you? I know we talked about it a little bit, but
I did not see it yet, no.
do we want to? I don't know how much we want to go into this,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I've read the entire word for word synopsis, so I know exactly what it's about. But there are some themes I think we could draw to Severance from there, certainly.
there are definitely themes. I guess my bigger question is whether there are clues. As we got on with one another here today before we started recording, we briefly mentioned how Ben Stiller and Adam Scott on the official podcast didn't mention this at all.
Nope.
And I think that's because they want us to find it, or they don't want to over determine things, or, there's that. But I also wonder, is it because there's a clue, as it were, in here?
So
Briefly,
I'll tell you, and we can talk about this in the context of that part of the plot, the Mark Nevin Cobell plot. But I have a theory, which maybe we'll save for the end, in terms of the what this episode of the Twilight Zone could mean about what they're trying to do and accomplish with the whole genocide thing. But we can talk about it in larger context.
okay. Well, first, I guess for people who haven't seen it, who haven't read the synopsis, or just listening to the podcast, give like a brief summary of the episode. I guess. I mean, I think this can be relatively quick. What happens in the Twilight Zone episode is Marsha White shows up at this department store, and she's looking for a golden thimble to buy as a gift for her mother or something like that. I don't remember anyway. And a bunch of people are getting into one elevator, but the elevator attendant guy's like, "Hey, come over here to this completely empty elevator." She's like, "Okay, well, of course, I'm special." But she is special. But then she gets in the elevator, and the guy's like, "Oh, you're looking for a golden thimble? You got to take you to the ninth floor," And they get up there, and the ninth floor is like completely empty. There isn't even merchandise around. It's very weird, And Marsha's like, "What's going on?" But there's a woman there at the counter, and so she tells the woman she's looking for a golden thimble, and the woman's like, "Oh, well, I've got a golden thimble right here," and it's like the only piece of merchandise on the floor.
Yeah.
I have no theories about the golden thimble of it all. Anyway, she goes back in the elevator. She said, "Oh, this thimble's damaged." And the guy's like, "Oh, complaints are on the third floor." She goes to the third floor, and they tell her that she has to return it to the department where she bought it. But they also tell her that the store does not have a ninth floor. It only has 8 floors. What are you talking about, lady? Right? There's only 8 floors. So she kind of freaks out. She lays down for a rest. They kind of forget about her.
Yeah.
And then when she wakes up, the store's been closed. The doors are locked. She can't get out. No one's there. And then the mannequins in the store all start saying her name.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Marsha White is actually a mannequin. And they've got this deal where each of them gets a turn to go out into the world for a month and be like a real person and experience what it's like to be a real person. And apparently, Marsha forgot that she isn't real. And she was a day late coming back, right? But now she remembers that she's actually a mannequin, and all the other mannequins forgive her. And the woman who sold her the gold thimble, who's actually a mannequin, heads out to take her turn out in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do 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 do. It's a season 1 episode of the Twilight
Yeah.
Zone,
Yeah.
first season. Yeah. And there's Rod Sterling, narration and all of that. But yeah, as you say, like thematically, there's so much you can connect to Severance from the elevator, mannequins. But I mean, is there a clue? I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But so in terms of thinking about the Mark Devin Cobell story, they obviously they meet up with her. Mark has just some great stuff about, what he's been up to, telling, updating Cobell on his life, since
Oh,
they
I'm doing
last
great. I had brain surgery in
yeah.
my basement.
Yeah. And so they come up with this plan that they're going to go to the birthing cabins where you can essentially you'll be severed. People will go into their severed state, and so they want to talk to Mark in that situation. And so this is all the intention, at least for Mark and Devin, are concerned to save Gemma, or to figure out a way to try to get Gemma out of. He says that she's locked up in the Lumen basement. So when he talks with Cobell about the Cold Harbor file, and is it done? Is it completed? Mark Audi clearly doesn't know. He says what happens when, that's completed, and Cobell refers to something like she's dead already. If that's done.
Yeah.
And so it's, this question that we've had all year, all season, and the next, finale is titled Cold Harbor, where we get some kind of answer to this is what does that mean for Gemma? What does that mean in terms of the larger picture of what Lumen is doing? If I'm connecting some dots to this Twilight Zone episode, we used to think that what they're doing on there is like, some version of either cloning or bringing people back from the dead or whatever it is. It seems it's almost like I don't know, is Gemma down there or other people down there as these mannequins and James Egan or the Egan family or Lumen can activate them to do what they want at certain times, or are they, as we've speculated before, creating a workforce that can, do anything for them at any time, whether they're on the severed floor or not. So sort of the sense of, yep, I'm a mannequin until it's my month to go up and be a human on the, in the shop. So they're trying to have some control over these people that they have brought down and are tinkering with down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility, although what you say sounds a lot to me like the plot of the show Dollhouse. And I wonder if they would, there are definite similarities.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't be surprised if what Lumen is doing here bears some resemblance. But,
yeah,
just to note that I know it's come up before and you've told me you haven't seen Dollhouse. So, I won't go too far. People who listening perhaps haven't either,
yeah,
but it's almost the basic premise in Dollhouse that they have people who have been sort of wiped and can be reprogrammed and sent out into the world to do this or that. So, I mean, it definitely could be going in that direction. But if we think about the Twilight Zone episode, that's not exactly what we're getting, actually. What we're getting is the mannequins get to almost have month-long vacations from work. Like their work is to be a mannequin,
yeah,
but it's possible to activate them so they can go out into the world and pretend to be human. And they're given the opportunity to do that.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I hate to think that it could be something like, okay, for 11 months out of the year, you're going to be Miss Casey, and then the other month of the year or whatever they're doing, you're going to go be, our good PR outside Lumen and, tell people to go get severed. I don't think it's headed that direction. It's like go be a real human for a while, but I mean, based on what we've seen in the connection to this Twilight Zone episode, it certainly could be.
so okay. So I guess the theory is that if you've completed the file, she's already dead means not that she is physically dead, but that Cold Harbor will mean the eradication of what we would call the Audi that is Gemma,
Yeah.
right? Like that at this point she will be multiply severed in various ways, but then always be in one of those any personas, something like that is what you're thinking.
Yeah, so like we've seen her be various any personas when she went into the rooms in that episode where she is featured. We've seen her obviously severed as Miss Casey. We're going to have you as a different level of severed and doing whatever we want when we send you outside this building into the world. I mean, it's just sort of speculating how they can completely control her in various situations, no matter where she is.
Yeah, so you'll have all of these different personalities, but none of them will any longer be, Gemma. Yeah, that makes sense. However, something else we have to talk about here, which is where my focus was more landing, I guess, as I watch this episode. It has to do with Harmony Cobell.
Hmm.
Do we trust Harmony Cobell? We shouldn't, at least
No.
not completely, right? But like Mark has a point in being distrusting of her, but um to what extent do we trust her? To what extent do we not trust her? To what extent is she telling the truth? To what extent is she I don't know, prevaricating? Please don't make me please don't make me apologize for the word.
Devour petulance, Cameron.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the word. But you know what I mean? So in part that's a general question, and when we cut to the end of the episode, that's one thing to think about, as we're already talking about what Harmony is saying in order to get into the birthing retreat.
Yeah.
How do we read that, right? I mean, her first attempt is to say that Devin is one of James's. James, yeah, I don't even know how to. That's what she says. there's an implication that James gets women pregnant on the down low, and it's a secret hush hush. Was Harmony one of those women in the past? Was Harmony's mother one of the women in the past? Who's Harmony's father? We talked about that
Yeah.
before.
You cannot help but speculate about that now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like already speculating about it, but then there's this. Is James Egan Miss Wong's father? Maybe, right? But anyway, as I was mentioning before, it seems like that doesn't quite work. And then she does the Twilight Zone thing as if it's code, right?
Hmm.
And there's a back and forth with the gate guard. So, like, what does that code mean? It
Yeah.
implies that there's a process at play that she's invoking. And the Twilight Zone reference, which I guess we have to presume that the Twilight Zone episode exists within the world of Severance, right? So the Twilight Zone reference seems to imply something like, um, I've got a mannequin who's forgotten their mannequin,
Hmm.
right? And then it seems like that's more a reference to Mark potentially.
I was going to say, yeah. So she is, if we are to go down the path of either Cobell is planning some sort of coup or takeover, or Cobell thinks I deserve all of these things because I actually created this. This is my thing. What better way to start down that process than bring the person back who she now knows, and Lumen is likely suspecting is starting to have something happen to where he is reintegrating, right? It's almost, we'll talk about Milchik in a little bit, but they have to know that something is up with Mark. He's not just missing. This is now not one day, right? There's the nosebleeds, there's all these clues. So if Cobell is not to be trusted, despite what she is saying, and is trying to either, like I said, make her way back into the good graces or pull an Irv and burn this place to the ground, she needs Mark in there to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's no big question. The episode leaves us on a cliffhanger where any Mark comes up and sees Harmony Cobell, kind of standing in front of the fire. And it's very ominous, and I
Yeah.
definitely didn't feel very trusting of her myself in that moment. But we don't know because it just leaves us there. I do think it's worth thinking about, though, circling back to what you were talking about before. If Miss Cobell has been kind of prevaricating, if she's being deceptive and so on, then well, we also shouldn't take what she says at face value earlier, right? So when she says, "Oh, well, if you've completed the file, she's already dead," um, to what extent is she telling the truth there? I also had the feeling when she said Cold Harbor, um, she was wondering if Mark would recognize it because of the reintegration stuff. But he
Yeah.
doesn't seem to.
If he does, he's doing a very good job of playing it off. But no, the whatever reintegration is supposed to do, it just seems like we're still in a state where he knows and understands certain things and he's out, and now he's changed again completely as he's walked into the birthing cabin and is his severed self, his any self.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the reintegration has worked that well or done that much. I mean, we've had
Nope.
some moments, we've had some flashes and things like this, but the most recent thing that Ragabi did, whatever it was supposed to do in terms of flooding his chip,
Yeah.
it seems like it just knocked him out. For a while, he had like a seizure,
Yeah.
and slept for a while, and in this episode, just seems like outie Mark. I didn't see any
Yeah.
indications of the reintegration having an effect in this episode, which I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of Ragabi either.
Yeah.
Don't know that I trust Ragabi either. So
We
there's a
have we
lot of
have
ways this
no
could go.
we have no proof from Mark and or Petey that any kind of reintegration works, whether you stay alive or not. It's not been successful with either of them. And we have heard various Lumen executives and now the representative of the board say reintegration is not possible. So we still don't have any example of this working other than Mark having a few flashbacks here and there.
Yeah, and I was thinking back to that scene, because what they say in that scene, that the reintegration is not possible. This is Natalie speaking for the board to Harmony, and now we know Harmony invented Severance, right? So it kind of puts that in a slightly different light. In season
Yeah.
one, she was interested in what was going on with PD, and I always felt maybe like she was open to the possibility that reintegration was possible. Um, but now I'm kind of thinking, well, no, maybe not. Maybe she really truly knows that trying to do this is going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, but she's still curious for the information
Oh
of
yeah.
what Ragabi is trying and what it did do. You know what I mean?
I think that the reveal last week that Cobell invented as a creator of the severance procedure, and apparently all of the pieces that go along with that, the Glasgow block, the OTC, all of these things, right? She tells her aunt that it opens up the door that there are things that can be done with severance or done as a part of severance that she chose to withhold from Lumen or from Jay Megan, or that certain things can be done or not done or manipulated or whatever. And she hasn't told them about that yet. And so her getting access to Mark will allow her to do some of the things. I don't know what that could be, but it
Hmm.
could be that, Lumen is not aware of the full capabilities of this thing yet.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. The more straightforward move, if Harmony Cobell is a baddie, would be that okay, well now she's got any Mark hostage and can
Hmm.
use him as a bargaining chip
Yeah.
to regain a place of power in Lumen. Say, hey,
Yeah.
you guys need Mark in order to finish the Cold Harbor file. I've got him,
Yeah.
and if you want him, you got to give me my job back. That
Yeah.
Milchick guy uses too many big words anyway. And what was that insubordination? He told you to devour
Yeah.
feculence. I mean,
So
let's talk.
should we move to Milchick for a second? Because I have
Yeah,
several
that's what I
things.
was to say. Let's talk about Milchick a little bit more here.
Because
Yeah.
there are two things in this episode obviously that stand out. Certainly the first time standing up to Drummond, which if you listen to Milchick's defense of this, is very reasonable case, right? The idea that as someone who has to manage these severed people, you better give me a measure of respect. And also, when he walks out that door, he's not my responsibility anymore, right? So there's that whole sense of Milchick starting to, I don't know if it's the Cobell path or just the I don't want to do this anymore path. And then there's the sense of when he's talking to Mark, on the phone, he's almost empathizing with Mark and almost like, oh man, what it must be like to be able to take a day just because you need to take a day, right? There's this path that Milchek is going down that's extremely interesting to me.
I agree, and it all worked for me, and I could relate to it. I mean, it's the joys of middle management, right? Or rather, the
Yeah.
travails of you're caught in the middle. I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak for your experience necessarily, but I have this experience I can pull on where um, I've been as or middle management. It was maybe 20 years ago. For a couple years, I was an assistant manager at a Rite Aid. I don't know if I've told you this before.
Okay.
And but so I relate to Milchek a lot in a certain way, I think, where when you're in that kind of position, on the one hand, you're in a position of power, you're in a position of authority. But on the other hand, what this means in middle management is you're being pulled on from both sides. Like because you don't have real authority, you don't have ultimate authority. There are
Yeah.
bosses above you who are demanding that you do what they want you to do, but means you have to carry it down to those who are below you on the chain, as it were. So you kind of got demands coming up from beneath you in the power structure and demands coming down from above you. And I feel like that's where Milchick is here, such that when Mark calls out, our boy's just tired.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just can't do it. Like he knows that his bosses would want him to make absolutely every effort to get Mark into the office, but he's just had that dust up with Drummond,
Yeah,
and he's just kind of over it in the
yeah.
moment. That's how I read it, at least.
And again, that reveal last week just creates this wide chasm. We always have talked about, okay, the comparison of Cobell when she was in that role to Milchick when he's in that role, and how, well, maybe Cobell often got the benefit of the doubt or was involved more in different things. It didn't seem like they respected her really much more, if at all, than Milchick. But Milchick is really being pulled, as you said, both directions, and finally just can't take it anymore. You're trying to motivate, inspire, push a team to reach certain goals. Obviously, this one's a very, very tangible Cold Harbor finish the file goal, but also zero, it seems like, um, support, input as to how it could be done, latitude to work within things when they don't work from above, right? So you're sort of faced with these two impossible things in both directions. And yeah, Milchick just seems like he's about ready to snap.
Yeah, and I mean and maybe at some level he's feeling like I don't want to make my bosses happy today. They're not
Yeah.
respecting me and so on. But at another level, this is something else to think about. Milchek maybe handles it the right way from a management
Hmm.
perspective. We have to bear in mind, even though Milchek says that, his responsibilities are only on the severed floor, and he's making a good argument there in that scene. We know that's not exactly right because we've
Yeah.
seen him out in the world,
Yeah.
um, convincing Mark to come back in the first place. Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
where
with
his
that
thing
in the
sort of breaks
background,
down.
recall at the beginning of season two, Audi Mark did not want to come back to work. And he took convincing, right? So maybe
I
that's
wonder if I wonder if they sent Milchick to do that because they knew if Drummond or Jamie Egan or somebody else tried to go convince Mark to come back, they would not have been able to do it. Right? We need to activate you, Milchick, with do this thing that, probably is not inside the scope of your normal responsibilities, but you're the only one that can do it.
well, or it's between his old job and his new job in a certain way, right? Because I think in his old job, he has been like that kind of liaison with the Audis as well. That's another aspect of maybe part of why Milchek's frustrated. It's one of those things where he got promoted and no one replaced him in his old job other than Miss Wong,
This
right? Um, which is yeah, man, there's so much in this show that you can think about in terms of a commentary on
Yeah.
corporate structure, bureaucratic structure. But anyway, um, to circle back to what I was saying before to try to finish out the thought, that I think from a certain point of view, maybe Milchick's right because he knows that if he pushes on Mark too hard, maybe Mark's just going to say, "Well, I quit then,"
Yeah, exactly.
because
Exactly right.
he struggled to bring him back into the office in the first place
Yeah.
at the beginning of the season. So he's also, I think, making that judgment call that when Mark says, I need a day for life stuff.
Yeah.
So all of this together, I think, is leading Milchick to say, all right, fine, just promise me you're going to come in tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Could I insert Miss Wong to the conversation as we talk about Milkchick?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because there's something I'd like clarity on. So did you get right? So she is told your Wintertide Fellowship is over. Did you get the impression that I think he uses the word graduated, like
Yeah.
you have graduated from the fellowship, as opposed to like you're no longer needed here in this thing. So if she indeed then graduate. Has she been in this thing like 2 weeks? I mean, I'm
Right.
trying to
Yeah.
put this together, and then where is she going from here? Milchick was clearly in the deputy director position a lot longer than Miss Wong was. Is Miss Wong special because she is an Egan, she is a Wintertide Fellowship, whatever that means, and that makes her special. I'm just trying to square the circle of why she's only there and why she's graduated in a matter of like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's odd. She says she thought she was going to be there for the whole quarter.
Hmm.
Um, I'm glad that you mentioned that it's only been a couple of weeks because I think
Yeah.
that as viewers of the show, we can easily lose sight of the timeline because we're waiting a week between episodes, but
Yeah.
generally
Yeah.
it's only a day of narrative time, like
Yeah.
per episode. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Is this Milchek deciding he wants to be rid of her because, he has the power to decide when she has completed her fellowship? So is he just deciding, I don't want Miss Wong around anymore, so I'm going to say she's completed her fellowship now?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
I almost took it as if Miss Wong is special, if she is, again, we have no idea, but either a descendant of Egan or identified somewhere somehow for being special, aka like Cobell was, is there someone above Milchek deciding you don't get to have her anymore? She doesn't get to be with you anymore because of what's happened here, because of the defiance, because of you haven't been able to get things around, you haven't been able to complete the file. We're moving her somewhere else.
hmm.
Um, and so that's why you get this angry sense of Milchek standing over her as she demands that she break that game. Like it wasn't his choice almost.
That's interesting. Yeah, so maybe the powers that be have decided that Milchek is not a suitable mentor for
Yeah.
Eustace Wong, so they're going to move her out of there. I love
And
the
you
bit where
and you would
he's
never tell an Egan descendant anything other than you've graduated.
right,
Congratulations. You get to move on up.
right. I love the bit where he says her bed is going to be moved. Did you catch that? It's not
Yeah.
doesn't usually go that way. You don't usually like take your bed with you to college or whatever, I mean,
Right. Right.
your bed will be moved to, and I don't have the note of the name of where she's going, but it's some empathy center.
Yeah.
Empathy
Empathy Center
awaits.
in Norway. Yeah. Some Scandinavian
Yeah.
empathy center. Yeah.
So he makes her smash the game. She seems sad to be leaving, you know. She apologizes to Dylan when Dylan is putting in his resignation request.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sad to see her go. I don't know. Is this the end with Miss Wong? Let's tie in a number of things along those lines where it definitely seems like it could be the case that several characters are leaving the story.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that I'm worried or scared about that, but I'm worried or scared about that, right?
Yeah,
I don't know the real life demands on these actors and actresses' time and their other things that they're doing, but if this is the last time that we see Miss Wong, John Turturro, Annie Dillon, several different storylines here that could go any number of directions. It's going to be tough to keep to keep this thing going.
yeah, but let's go by one. So we've been talking about Miss Wong. There's a chance that she's exiting the show, I think.
Yeah,
And I'm tempted to say, well, that would be okay. I certainly
yeah,
wouldn't mind seeing her again. I've enjoyed Miss Wong a lot this season. So if she circles back into the story later, that would be great. But then a couple of these other characters are really central. Dylan and Irving are central characters to the show. I don't think that Dylan is out, but we'll see. Um, it's true that his Audi threatened to quit
yeah.
in order to keep his wife from, quote, using his own body to cheat on him. All right, that's not actually a quote. I paraphrased it. I changed the
Yeah,
pronouns. Um, that's true, and then it's true that the innie submitted a resignation request, but we know that the Audi would have to approve that resignation request. All right,
yeah,
what's going to happen in between has to include a conversation between Audi Dylan and Gretchen,
yep,
right?
yep.
And I have every impression that they need this income to support their family.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gotten a little bit of clarification just on some of the things that Gretchen has been wearing of what her role is, or at least what her perceived role is. But if Dylan, who is outside of Lumen, is aimless and has nothing going on and talks to people about how he's been in there earning a paycheck, if I think he can put two and two together. If Gretchen tells him, "I went to see you and told you as in any self, I will never see you again." Your response to that was, "You resigned. Look, you got this resignation thing right here." He's going to say, "Okay, well, I'm going to decline that then. If we're all settled on this other stuff, I'm going back to work." Right? I think that's my impression of what's going to happen.
Me too. Or in one way or another, I guess I more or less expect that Gretchen will convince him to keep the job.
Yeah,
And so that we will see both Dylans again. We'll see any Dylan. He'll go back to work, and then the next step has to be, I guess, for Annie Helly to convince Dylan to get on board with her plan to go find the exports hallway, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, Not saying it'll go just like that or that it'll go smoothly, but I don't think that I don't think Zach Cherry's leaving the show. Don't think so. From narratively, right?
And that seems extremely logical because of, Helly apparently is now being at least temporarily supervised by Jamie Egan on the severed floor, or, she's there with him. And so she's going to need someone to take these directions and go find out what's going on over there.
Yeah, we have to talk about that too. Let's talk about Irving first and Bert.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean I loved all this stuff. I love the scene between them in that train station.
Yeah.
Which side note, I've been to that train station before.
Oh, in
It
Utica?
is
Really?
it's indeed it's a beautiful train station. Yeah, in Utica, New York, which they
Wow.
confirmed on the podcast. Part of why I wanted to listen to the official podcast even was to get that confirmation because I was like, I think I was in that train station before. Yeah. Um, but anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there. We get some confirmation that Bert has been a Lumen goon, although they never called it that. They use very specific language. He doesn't tell us what the language is.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I don't know. Um, sorry, there might be some stuff to ask questions about around all of this. But on the face of it, if we take it at face value, it seems that Bert does take him to a train station to get him out of town to save him from Lumen. Um, I guess there's some possibility that maybe Bert is doing this for Lumen. I was a
Yeah.
little worried during those shots of Irving on the train that someone was going to like show up from out of frame real quick and shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
But that
Oh, the
did not
flashback.
happen. It just seems like
Well,
he's gone off to parts
well,
unknown.
the maybe this is recency bias of having just watched this show. We talked a lot about that show, Say Nothing on FX about the IRA, right? Well, a large component of that show was certain characters. The IRA would not have one person do everything, decide what to do with them, drive if someone was to turn against them, let's say the same person would not sort of be their judge and jury, their driver, their executioner, the person that buried them. There were different people at every one of those steps, right? So it seemed like Bert saying I was the driver and never, sort of ask questions. He was the person that would drive whatever it is to whatever Lumen's going to do with them and never ask questions. Didn't actually do it, but he was the guy that got them there and just, I do what I'm told and then I leave.
Yeah, but so maybe he's doing that job in this instance is one
Yeah.
possibility, right? In which case, um, I don't know, maybe Irving has a chance, but he's not free yet.
Yeah.
It would kind of suck. Like Bert doesn't even tell him to pack a bag or anything. She's thinking about that. It's just like, get on that train, just you and your dog. So, all right, I guess I'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
We must
Um,
protect radar at all costs, whatever it takes. Do not do anything to radar. That will be a problem for me.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right, radar must be okay. But so I feel like there's two possibilities here, right? First possibility is you take all of this at face value, and Irving leaves town. We don't know where he went. Lumen doesn't know where he went. Bert doesn't know where he went. He is presumably safe and no longer a character in Severance, right? I guess it could be like that, and then they could find some way for him to come back of his own accord or something like that because of whatever he's doing in terms of investigating Lumen. Or the other possibility, I think, is that no, Bert really was doing this for Lumen, even though it seems like he's saving Irving. He's really not. Maybe Irving has some chance, but not really. And, some Lumen goon is going to come after him on the train or something next
Yeah.
week. And
I, I do not even want to think about this show without John Turturro in it. I mean,
yeah,
certainly we have plenty of precedents of extremely popular shows having to lose characters for various reasons, outside of control of a lot of things. I don't know. I'm just kind of hopeful for the path of, again, we said this earlier, but the guy who said, let's burn this place to the ground, he's going to go off in the sunset, and Bert thinks he's going to be happy and Irv's going to escape, everything that could have happened to him, but he's not going to be satisfied and has to, I don't know, show up next season as the White Knight of sorts to, help them take this thing down. I don't think that's going to happen in the finale.
no, I just wonder if we'll even see him in the finale. And then we don't know moving forward after that.
Yeah.
I'm certainly agreed. I want John Turturro in this show. I want Christopher Walken in this show. But I do feel like with how the narrative is developed, I wouldn't exactly be surprised if we
Yeah.
just never see Bert or Irving again.
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed, but I don't know if I'd be surprised. Um, I would be surprised if Dylan actually quit and we
Yeah.
never saw his ending again. I would be really stunned by that.
That would
So
be so much dramatic change to the structure and the ensemble of this show. I just can't see how they would do all of that. Again, barring forces outside of our control that have to do with the actors' lives and all that we don't know about.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to leave it there on that kind of speculative front. But I mean, I hope we see all of these characters again. I really do
Yeah.
because all the characters in this show are really great.
Yeah.
And I do think meaningfully Dylan and Irving are as central as Helly and Mark, although they also aren't, because we all know Mark and Helly are the co-protagonists of this show. I mean, depending on, because if you want to view it, like if you wanted to make the argument that Helly is the real protagonist of the show, I think you could do it.
Mhm.
But it's Mark. But
Yeah.
let's talk about Helena a little bit more, and Jane. The opening scene where she's eating the eggs on the plate is just weird and brilliant and funny, and I don't know what else to say about it. She does mention in that scene that they're, what does she say? Something that she basically says they're taking care of Irving.
Yeah. You need to
She's
go
having
see
him.
Mr. Bailiff. Yeah.
We're seeing to Mr. Bailiff. So, I mean, that's another thing. Not to belabor the point too much, but like if we take all of that at face value with Bert,
Yeah.
then there is this indication that Lumen had some other plan about
Yeah.
what to do with Irving that Bert has thwarted, as it were, right? So there's definitely something there that should carry forward in some way. Um. Anyway, they think that this is going to be the day when Cold Harbor is completed. I guess not entirely clear to me if the stuff with the eggs was because it's a special day or if that's just a normal breakfast at the Egan household. I thought the former. What about you?
I I never got the sense that this is, just as there was an egg celebration for the severed floor, we're going to celebrate Cold Harbor Day by having eggs, even though Jane wants her to eat them raw.
We should
And,
take them raw.
yeah, I just, I mean, if you just told me to stop this episode after 5 minutes and tell me where it's going from here, I don't know what I would have come up with in my head but that was just a disturbing scene. But
I
yeah,
like
I
the
took it
idea.
as this is a special day.
I like the idea that he wishes she would take them raw, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not going to, a potentially acceptable compromise is for them to be hard boiled but split into 8 sections and meticulously arranged around a little boy's face on the special plate. Those are two
I
options,
mean,
Hallie.
I
Um,
mean, ugh,
um,
just
Anyhow,
disturbing. I
one question.
think this is, I'll just as a general note, there have been, we talked about the official podcast a lot. There have been at least 4 or 5 episodes where Ben Stiller talks about how much he hates eggs. So I think
Yeah,
he does these things like let me show you how disturbing eggs could be by putting them in this scene this way and making people do this. So I think that's just also a little bit of his subconscious coming out.
it's been a little unclear to me, right? Because then how much is Ben Stiller and how much is Dan Erickson? And
Yeah.
how much is there now this kind of back and forth of Dan Erickson knowing that Ben Stiller thinks eggs are just utterly disgusting. So he
Yeah,
keeps writing stuff about eggs. Like,
exactly.
Ben's gonna have to direct this scene. Um, but yeah, that is fun. There's a lot of egg stuff, of course. I don't know. I guess I still don't have any speculation on the eggs. I didn't have any speculation on the eggs in my article.
Yeah.
Um, I guess there was some little part of my brain that started thinking about the pregnancy question that people have talked about as a possibility,
Yes.
just because I mean that's what eggs are, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I don't know. I really hope it doesn't become like a telenovela about who's the father of Helena Hagen's child or something.
I don't know. For some reason, I am getting more on board with the idea that that's going to be a major season 3
It could
plot
be.
line.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, but all right. I won't preemptively complain because we don't even
Yeah.
know that she's pregnant or will be or anything like that. But there have been some hints that maybe she is.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, as you mentioned before, any Helly, she's trying to like memorize these directions.
Yeah.
I don't know why you do that instead of just carrying the note with you. I
I guess
mean,
it's just a matter of, destroying the evidence so no one can find it or something. I'm not real sure.
it's a great idea, but I mean,
Yeah.
you looked at that piece of paper, right? I mean, it's like left,
Yeah.
right, left, 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 right, 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 left, right, right, left, right, left, right, right.
Exactly.
Like it's I've got pretty good memory, and that feels nigh impossible
No, no.
to memorize. But anyway, she's trying to do that, and then James shows up and he says, "You tricked me." And I was thinking about the scene also from the beginning of season 2 where he calls her a fetid moppet.
Yeah.
He calls Audi Helena fetid moppet,
Ben Moffat. Yeah.
seemingly for what any Helena did during the OTC.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a meaningful way in which here he seems to be accusing any Helly or holding her responsible for the failure of Audi Helena. So I got to thinking about how it really kind of seems like James isn't marking a difference. And we might be able
Yeah.
to take that in a couple different ways, but given that we know that Harmony actually invented Severance,
Okay, here we go.
this
Yep.
is the question I put on our show sheet is, does he even know how it works? Does he really even understand how it works?
There is I think now a clear indication that he thinks that there is some overlap between, who these people are and that there's a sense of one can control the other or one can rein in the other and just has no sense of how this thing works. He just said this something that's going to be profitable and helpful for us, so we're going to take it from Cobell. And now that we have it, we're going to use it to whatever it is to accomplish our goal, which is what we're doing down on the, downstairs in the exports hall. So yeah, I think there's a strong indication that he just, yeah, it is going to go down there, whereas Heliar just has simply no idea what he's talking about.
Right. And so then maybe also there's a difference between what James Egan thinks they're going to achieve with Cold Harbor and what they're
Yeah,
actually going to achieve, and so on.
yeah,
And that whole question about how the Kier pseudo religion lines up with the Lumen corporate vision, as it were.
exactly, exactly.
Um, I don't know, man. Is it wrong that there's some part of me that wants them to succeed at Cold Harbor just so I can know what it is?
Oh, I absolutely think that whether they are successful or not, we better. that's one of those we've talked about this all the time. One of those moments where I would not mind some exposition.
Yeah,
Tobel saying, "Mark, do you understand if this finishes, this is going to happen to Gemma?" Like,
right.
okay, well, at least show us that and tell us the stakes and what they're fighting for here.
I kind of hope so in one way or the other. It just seems
Yeah,
like there would be some possibility that they keep it from happening, and thus we never really fully know what it would have been. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
hopefully they
yeah.
give us enough information that we can at least make good guesses, as it were, or
Yeah.
interpretations. Um, let's see what else. I know we've been going kind of long today. I think we've hit on most everything. I'll
Yeah.
just mention this quickly. I don't know. Have you ever read Infinite Jest, the David Foster Wallace book?
I think I read a long time ago, but I have no recollection of what it is.
It's perfectly fine if you haven't read Infinite Jest. Just be honest. You haven't read it.
I
You
don't
know,
remember it. I remember
you
like maybe that was on a high school list, but I have no idea.
you bought it at some point thinking that you were going to read it,
Probably.
and then you use it as a doorstop. It's fine. It's fine. I have read it, but anyway, one thing that I noticed both in this episode and the previous episode on the Egan heads,
Hmm.
and I forgot to go and look at what it was on Harmony's head, but on the one that Miss Wong gets, it says the year of vision,
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yes.
and there was something similar, and there might be another reference point or two, but it very much reminded me of in Infinite Jest. They don't number the years anymore like we do. They've entered into sponsored time,
Okay.
so it's kind of like sports stadiums, right? But so instead of 1999 or whatever, it's the year of glad. We
Okay.
actually have to do some work to try to figure out how it would line up to the numbers that we're used to. Anyway, that we don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole. I just wondered
Yeah.
if they were intentionally kind of pulling on that or alluding to that
Interesting.
with the
Well,
idea
yeah,
of
just in
not
more
numbering
sense of,
years.
yeah, we're not going to put a year on something, so I mean, no reference to exactly when we are and what time frame we were working in here. Just in your commentary from last week about the sense of inconspicuous time.
Yeah, there could be some connection and so on. But I also always found it to be one of these really humorous elements in Infinite Jest that
Yeah,
you go, it's the year of glad, it's the forget what other examples are that are actually in the book, but it would be like
yeah,
it's not 2025, it's the year of Coca-Cola. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And you would have to know and remember,
yeah.
and be able to make the order for yourself or whatever. So I don't know if they're alluding to that at all here, but it occurred to me, so I thought I'd throw it in. And
Let me ask you one more question, which is
yeah,
the season one finale
hmm
was, I mean, I don't even know if it's debatable, was so good and so well received and so highly regarded in terms of what it accomplished, how dramatic it was, all that it did. Do you think or believe that the season two finale can live up to that one?
I mean, yes, but it's going to be different.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't have the same kind of mechanism at its disposal
yeah,
of our innies intentionally flipping the OTC to go out in the world and what's going to
yeah,
happen. I mean, that setup was just great. And with this one, I'm not sure exactly what the setup is, and I'm not sure exactly what the payoff will be.
yeah,
I don't know if I expect it to be as intense as a season one finale. Maybe it will be.
yeah,
I mean, we don't know. But I was rewatching season one right before season two came out, and when I was rewatching that finale again, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's just like this is just an amazing episode of television, and it's
yeah,
just bang, 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 and like you're on the edge of your seat the entire time, and
yeah,
there's so much tension in every moment,
yeah,
and meaningfully so much happens. It's amazing that it's only 40 minutes long.
exactly. Yeah.
And
I
it doesn't
don't
need to be
think
any longer. you know.
Right. And I don't think that this season finale, I expect it to be as high tension, high drama as that finale. I expect where my anticipation, I don't know if I'm right or not, anticipation will be that the way that this one compares to the next one is in what they reveal, right? We're going to see something about what Lumen is doing or what they're trying to accomplish, and something significant is going to be laid out there in front of us that, oh, if Mark really is to be Neo in the Matrix, this is why. This is why he has to go in there and do it. That type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, I agree. I do expect more of a reveal, or a phrase that comes to mind for me is cracking open. Like, is
Mm,
Severance going to crack open at the end of
yeah.
season two, like an egg? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but I mean, hopefully it's clear enough what I mean by that. In the beginning, the story seems very kind of small in terms of, hey, it's about what's happening on the severed floor in the office. Yes, you also have the Audi story, but it was very focused on like what's going on with Mark and what's going on with Devin. Um, is it going to be becoming more of a story about the world that we're in and how Lumen factors into that?
I
Maybe.
think that's a good assumption. I would not be surprised if we saw some of that, and boy, I cannot wait.
I can't wait either. All right, so we've got one more week of Severance here. Thanks for listening as always. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review. If you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it. Check out tvobsessive.com. You can find articles there from me on every episode of Severance, and also things on all sorts of other TV shows. I'd encourage you to poke around. Hopefully, you like reading things. Follow TV Obsessive on social media, search for TV Obsessive. And we will be back next week talking about the season two finale of Severance, Cold Harbor, an event that will change the world, um, cure humanity,
That's right.
and
Glorious day. Glorious day.
yeah, and we will be eating hard boiled eggs to celebrate.
Yeah, we might. Oh boy, we'll see. Man, cannot wait. Literally cannot wait. So yeah, we'll see everybody next week.
All right.